Good. So we're on. We're live. It's Sunday, May 8th, Mother's Day. Okay, we're back for another great talk. Peace, love, and soul. Sunday morning wisdom, however you call it, with the usual suspects. We got Dr. Charlie Cartwright, Alvin Brown, myself, Raymond, Ndjonok, Tonye. So happy to be here, guys. And what are we starting with today? Actually, I was just telling Charlie about how my brother just got engaged. My older brother just got engaged, so I'm really happy for him. We're kind of preparing everything. His fiance is from Cameroon, so traditionally, like it's particular the way we have to do it because he called her parents back home in Cameroon, and she has an older brother here in Canada. So what we're gonna have to do is get representatives of my family here, go meet their older brother in Canada with kind of his clan and discuss, like some of the terms or whatever. And same thing in Cameroon, where I'm gonna have some uncles and everything go meet her parents also. And then culturally, depending on which tribe you're from, they're gonna basically come up with a list of either symbolic things for my brother to do or literal things for my brother to get, in order to be, I guess, worthy. And they usually come up with a deadline for that list also. So we'll see how this is. I know, like, my younger brother married, his wife is from Rwanda. They have something similar, but them, it was very symbolic. My brother didn't necessarily have to buy a bunch of things, but I have some friends from other countries where, man, they gave them, like, here's some suits to buy for the dad, is some this, here's that. You have a deadline about 6 to 8 months, about 15, sometimes more, $20,000 worth of stuff, and uncles chip in sometimes. So depending on the culture, it gets out of hand sometimes. In our end, we haven't lived that in our family, but it's something, So yeah, I'm happy for.
I would be forever single, I'm thinking.
Me too.
I'd be a bachelor for a long time.
Me too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love you, but the scavenger hunt, I'm not feeling that one.
Me too.
Oh, wow.
And it just goes back with, like, culture and tradition. Sometimes you see, like, there are certain things that people just repeat. They don't know exactly why they repeat it for. And it's not because it was part of the tradition that it made any sense to be there.
There's the topic right there.
I guess, yeah, that's a good topic. Things being repeated, people not even necessarily asking questions why.
That's the topic.
They're there.
That is the topic, my friend.
Exactly. So yeah. How about we lead into that? So obviously, Dr. Charlie, you're from the States. Here, Alvin and I, we're in Canada, but within our communities, or even in the business worlds, in families, how sometimes people just naturally do stuff, not necessarily understanding why they even do it, not necessarily questioning it. And yeah, there's some bad things that come out of that, What's your take on that, guys?
Wow. This is interesting because, believe it or not, it ties to this week.
What?
my experience, and I have a family member that has been stuck in this rinse and repeat cycle of life for 5 decades, and you would think that after a decade of frustration, even, there'd be a pause in the action to say, wow, I'm not enjoying the course of my life or the results that I'm experiencing, and what can I do to change this? But instead, many times people just continue to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And if you do that enough times, you'll spend your life struggling. And I understand what it is to grow up, in a dysfunctional home and have parents that have not completed their education. And so that's a challenge to overcome, but it's really hard for me to understand not attempting to overcome. It's I don't, and again, I think that part of life is to achieve. Part of life is to improve. Part of life is to learn and grow. To me, it's a natural progression, and to look around and ask questions. But when we don't look around and ask questions, and we just keep doing what we've always done, then we're setting ourselves up for disappointment, for failure in many, many cases. And so it's a head scratcher for me to have a conversation with someone that is really not interested in personal growth. And it's the only way really for a lower class family to become a middle class family, or a middle class family to become an upper class family in the States, is to make improvements. Otherwise, that next generation and generations to come are doomed to similar outcomes. And now, the way the world is changing with technology, it's just more and more apparent that we have to evolve our thinking as human beings. And if we don't, we are literally get left behind in this society, because it's the information is exponential, and technology and all these things. And it used to be that someone could sit on the sideline for 20 or 30 years of adult life, and then decide, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and try to change my life and work hard, and just through sheer hard work, using their back, they could make a really good living. It's getting more and more difficult to do that now because of technology. And the gap between the upper class and the lower class is wider than it's ever been, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a knowledge standpoint. And the big one, the key is that knowledge, and that's accelerating. And so it'll become more and more difficult for someone growing up in a family like that to succeed. I was with a friend yesterday. We went to breakfast. We got a cousin that's in the hospital here, so we went to breakfast at a location that was close to the hospital. Then we went to the hospital, and afterward, I drove by, and it's a shopping area where people like the outdoor shops, restaurants, things like that. And I drove by, and there was an elderly Black man sitting on the curb next to this bookstore, of all places. And he's sitting on the curb, and he looked to be 60s, 70s. He's panhandling. And on his left was a kid, maybe 5, 6 years old. And on his right was a kid, maybe 5, 6 years old. And they were sitting down next to him. And I was thinking to myself, like, what are those kids going to know? They think that's normal. And it was a striking image to me. And those kids, little do they know that they have a huge mountain in front of them to climb because of what they've seen and how they're growing up. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Well, yes, I would. I'm gonna love taking this conversation. This is
This conversation, this topic is everything. That's anybody listening now, in the future, whenever they pick this up. This is, if you want to know the crux of your pain and the solution to your problem, this is it. Because when we popped out of that womb, we have zero input. We're a brand spanking new AI, a brand spanking new, canvas ready to be painted on. We have no clue. So we're counting intimately and without question. We're counting on the information from the people that influence us at that point. And that is the truth. That is our truth. Whatever they tell us, however they're living, whatever their culture is, that's our truth. And we don't question, we don't ask. We can't question. We don't have any background to question. We don't have any other resource to judge it by. Nothing. So it's truth. Unequivocally truth. If we believe in this religion, that's truth. If we believe in this way of behaving, that's truth. And that is the only way we're going to behave. Some of us won't even question that truth forever, ever and ever. We will not question it. We will not dare to question it, because part of our brain is built on being in a herd of people, being in a group, and to be cast away from your group in your brain, is equivalent to getting killed, because we needed tribes to survive way, way back. So everything goes back to survival, and being ousted from your group or thrown out is death. Many of us won't do it. Many of us are not courageous enough to break the rules, to bend it, to break it, to do something different, to, lead something, even if it's wrong. We see it all the time. Leaders who lead people down a road that just follow. The way back, there's a Jim Jones massacre. Here you go, feed your kids the cyanide and drink it first, give it to them first, and then you drink. And they did it. So that's not an example. And there've been many more. We've all heard of compounds and, people who follow dictators and are afraid to, jump out from the norm. And so everything in our lives, we have to question it, which is something I do, because there's so many, goodness gracious, there's so many rules of life. If, are you black enough? Are you white enough? Are you straight enough, gay enough, trans enough? You walking on this side? It's so many rules. So we fall into line and we just follow the rules, and nobody wants to, break the rules. So we get handed down rituals and we never question them. We never even wonder why I'm doing this. Why am I behaving this way? Why do I believe this? Adamantly believe this. Like, go to my grave believing this. Never questioning. It's just not what we do here. That's just not what we do here. This is not how it works, just done. No other vision of anything else. My parents never went there, so we don't go there. My this never had. And if you do, good God, the people that will work towards getting you back in line, unconsciously, consciously, they just nudge you. They can nudge you or shove you back in line, whichever one. And nudging is, oh man, you're doing that? Who do you think you are, man? Like, what you doing? We're not good enough now for you. Those are nudges. And then there's a plain old shove you back is, no, you're not doing that. Not in this family. Or else you're out. You're out of the house. That's a shame. You're going to put shame on the family. You know what I mean? So everything we are is a product of the things we decide to believe and buy into. And we can't help it. Everything, the way we dress, the way we, think, you got to be able to question. And this is why I believe in just checking yourself every so often, or being around people who will check you, or look at what you're doing. Is it working? If it's working for you and it's not hurting anybody, keep going. It's a good tradition. Keep going. But if it doesn't feel good and it doesn't resonate with you, check it. Why don't you do something different? Why don't you dare to push the edges? Maybe you'll be breaking free of all those people in a trance that's been in that same trance for decades or centuries. And then they finally go, you know what, I didn't like that either, and change it. So I always do my best, and I'm a victim of it too. I'm sure in some way. We don't do that here. That's not what we do in your profession. Aren't you a father? That's another belief thing. Right? Aren't you married? What, are you not in your 50s? What are you doing that for? Are you not this? Are you not that? So yeah, constantly question. So I'm always doing that. And then one of the things I attempt to do every so often is do something different. Like simple things will lead to bigger things. Drive a different way. If you drove this way every day, why don't you take some time and drive a different way? See, because what I've noticed is if I drive a different way, simple thing, drive a different way, my brain wakes up and it stimulates it to. And the more I do these novel things, the brain starts to look at things differently, other things, because it doesn't go to sleep. It doesn't go into automation like we do all the time and don't notice anything. Because after a while, there's habituation that happens and the brain habituates because it loves to do that. It loves to save its RAM. So it shoves everything to automation and call it a day. We go to sleep and it can just run efficiently. But when you challenge it with novel things, it changes. So yeah, I would definitely, look at your current flow of business, life. How can you shake it up? This is why people love, no one remembers a copy. No one will ever remember a copy of something. They remember the original. And they remember something that breaks it, right? We all remember 9/11 because we know where we were. We know what we were wearing. We know what we were eating. We know what we were saying. We know who we were with, because those episodic memories are what shakes the brain up and gets us to remember things. Nobody remembers September 14th, 2001. No one remembers that. So, because this wasn't nothing in some people something might happen significant for someone, but not generally. So, I could go on about this conversation because this is something I talk about all the time. When I coach people, I just listen to I go back and ask, tell me about your parents. That was my next question, is tell me about your parents. Because I can tell you, your chatter has got to be something close. It's very close, and that's what's stopping you, because it worked for them in 1940 something, 1950, 60. Is it going to work in 2022? Maybe not. You got to challenge it. All right. So that's me. I'm going to hand that back and add on.
Great stuff. We talked about programming, right? And as human beings, I think it's crazy how we all come from, let's say, one seed, okay? And if we planted that seed into the ground, everyone has the potential to become either like an oak tree, a baobab tree, to grow to this length, or just to grow a little bit. We're like the ultimate adaptation machine, human beings, and we seek novelty. We seek whatever is new. If we look at technology, why do we always push the boundaries? Every single year, every car company comes up with like a new model, a new redesign. It's like we look for novelty. We look to learn something new, right? And last week, we talked about a concept that I thought about all week. We talked about disturbance one way or another. As you said, Alvin, if you go to work and if one morning you decide to just take a different route, okay, you shake things up, you disturb something, it kind of gets you out of your box, your thinking, and you get to see something else. Because one way or another, we all have to adapt. We all have to be curious. We all have to see what's around us so we can learn from it. That's exposure, right? A lot of people are not necessarily exposed to a different way of thinking. And depending on where you're at, it's not going to happen by itself. You have to create that through to some shape or form of disturbance, right? So whether we create that disturbance ourselves or we put ourselves in situations where we're disturbed, it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing because it shakes us up. And if we're not, let's say, brave enough to challenge our own thinking, just naturally by association, we'll hear certain things that will challenge it for us, which is a good thing. And I find you can be confident enough in believing what you believe in, but you got to be brave enough to allow what you believe to be challenged sometimes, so you can grow, so you can see what else is out there. I always like to give examples, but yesterday I was at a kid's party. One of my friend's son, it was his birthday, so we went to the park. And they're all great kids, but one of them is always like that too. He's the one that doesn't share. He's the one that, let's say, we were singing happy birthday to one of the kids, and this kid just put his hand in the cake, all that stuff. Okay, he's that one kid. And I remember my son was really, really mad because he brought a soccer ball to play with his friends, right? And this kid just kept taking the soccer ball. So all the kids came up to me. They were like, hey, this kid doesn't want to share. My son would run and just take the soccer ball away, right? And then after a while, it was getting pretty hectic. So I just told the kids, listen, I'm taking the soccer ball. We're not playing anymore. Play something else. And then while we were walking back home, my son told me, hey, this kid, I won't say his name, my son literally said, he needs a dad, He told me that because we've never seen his father anywhere, right? He runs around, does all these things, and his mom, you could tell she's a little overwhelmed. And my son said that. And then I told my son, we don't know. And yeah, maybe he has but see, that's like my son's programming, right? He's around his father, so he assumed something. So it opened up for a certain conversation, saying that people are at different places in life. We can never assume anything. How about you talk to him, right? He's your friend. You see him at daycare every day. He's pretty fun. It's just a little wild, but we don't know, right? But don't assume anything. So now I've realized, even on my own, whether it's positive or negative, the way I interact with my son programs him a certain way, right? So in his mind, if this kid is acting up, if this kid is not sharing this, that, he must not have a dad. That's what my son was thinking, naturally. So I agree with that. Always questioning our programming, because we may think, hey, we got it all figured out. It's the absolute truth, but we know there are different layers and different levels of truth depending on what you're exposed to. what you're exposed to. Another good example, last week I was at this event at a hotel on Wednesday, and you had like the CEO of YMCA all over Quebec, and executives, and I was there. And I looked at things a little bit differently than most people around me. I know is that I would dissect everything that the CEO was saying, how he moved, how he talked to people. I would literally like dissect it to understand, okay, how does someone lead like over 1,000 people and this and this and that, right? And then I actually went and spoke to him. We had a conversation, and I understood that like his level of exposure to certain things is just a little bit different, than what I know. So he sees things a little bit different because of that, because he has different scars than I have. But naturally, as I look at them, I'm like, okay, what if I wanted to be there? I'm going to dissect everything. But just by being exposed to it, I came out learning something, right? Because I showed up there not just to be there. I literally looked at him the whole day, everything he did, because I was exposed to it. I was going to take advantage of it, right? So, but all of that, one way or another, starts with the fines. And I'll go with my last example again from that little kids party yesterday. One of the parents is a kinesiologist. Okay, I coached him for a while, business-wise. Now it fell off just because he's into so many different things, and he kind of felt bad about himself because he's not pushing to his full potential in his business. And he came up to me again yesterday. He's like, Ray, I'm so inspired by you one way or another because you're not afraid. You just go forward. You try stuff. And then I told him again, so that's by exposure to me. I told him, no, that's wrong. I'm actually afraid. I always ask myself, why do I keep putting myself in situations where I don't know, but I know I have to do it in order to grow? So you're thinking I'm not afraid. That's actually false. I am. I just decide to be a little bit braver than I am afraid. And we're all capable of that, right? So just by that little conversation, maybe it left him something different. But now, because he disturbed his thinking and came to me and actually asked me, he saw that what he thought actually wasn't true. I'm afraid, like anybody else, we're actually the same. It's just choices, and it's how much do you intentionally expose yourself to higher levels of thinking, to different ways of doing things. I intentionally reached out to Alvin way back, and I told him, hey, I need to be challenged, right? So, and now I got the chance to be exposed to you guys week by week, so I can challenge what I think, challenge what I see from what you guys see, So this is me, and I'm passing the mic.
There we go. This is just such a great conversation because we have the opportunity to challenge ourselves. We have the opportunity to choose a new course, regardless of what we've been exposed to and how we've grown up. And I go back to that example yesterday with the elderly person and the two young children. They were panhandling outside a bookstore, right? Not just any bookstore, but it's a part of a chain, the largest chain in the United States. Barnes & Noble is the largest chain. A lot of the bookstores have went out of business over the years with the proliferation of the internet and Amazon and all these things, that a lot of people don't walk into bookstores as much as they used to and pick up books. However, here these children are sitting outside this bookstore that has the solution inside for all the answers they need from a physical standpoint, an emotional standpoint, spiritual standpoint, financial standpoint. All the answers are literally steps away. And here, this person, even the adult with a cup, would be better served walking in that store and just browsing and reading. Because, like a library, you can walk into a bookstore and read for free. And it's such an amazing concept. And for me, when I look at paradigm shift from how I grew up to where I am now, there's two major differences: the people that I've been around, right, and the books that I've read and am reading. Those two things have created a completely different trajectory. However, if you don't change the people that you're around or get introduced into some new ideas, concepts by other human beings, it's going to be really tough to break free of that. However, you can still do it. The avenue is books. Okay. And I think statistically, it's like 99.99% of successful people have been able to achieve their success through the learning process, which is heavily weighted by reading. And so we can read our way into a new level of thinking, and then that will give us instructions on what we physically need to do. So, and I'm always fascinated by the information that I take in. I love it. And then how much I didn't know before I picked up that book about that particular subject. So even though I know so much about leadership, I can pick up a new leadership book written by someone that gives a different perspective, and it takes my mind in a completely different direction and expands my knowledge on that subject matter. So we can always expand our knowledge, so have more information and a deeper knowledge. And then they're just things people have figured out, right? It's like the light bulb. It's good that there's three of us on this call. We don't have to spend any part of our day figuring out how to construct a light bulb because it's already been done. So we can take advantage of that technology and use it for our benefit. And so there's so many things like that in life that we can find in books. We don't have to reinvent the wheel because there's an instruction manual for that. So when we're not taking advantage of the instruction manuals in life, we can spend our time in a place that we don't need to. And that valuable resource, when we spend it in a direction that's not going to move the needle forward for us, then we're literally spinning our wheels and impeding our own progress. So it's an interesting life for sure, in that we have this capability to change so much about how we live and our enjoyment of life. And we're unique on the planet for being able to do that. You know, there's no family of deer in Canada that can decide, you know what, we don't like the forest here. We're going to go to the States, and we're going to have a better life, right? They're not capable of that. However, we are. And it's one of the great things about being human, is that we have this unlimited potential to grow and to change our environment to our liking. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Excellent. I wanted to touch on a few things. So Raymond, as soon as you were talking about, you being approached by a person and saying, oh, you're so courageous and fearless. And you said, like Customato said to Mike Tyson, the difference between the hero and the coward is that the hero stays and fights, but they're both scared. They're both afraid. Just the same way we both worry. Every time I walked into the ring, I wasn't sure after the corner people left and you're looking over and there's your fear across the ring, potentially, or the person you think you can dominate, whichever one. Either way, it creates a problem. But here's a person across the ring who at any moment you make an error, you're being embarrassed. You won't die, but you could. But more likely your ego is being attacked. And so you'll fight for that. So each step into the ring is facing that fear and stepping out, which is probably why I did those things. I danced, here I am, 16 years old, wrestler in high school, martial artist. And I met my girlfriend and wife then, and she's dancing. And I said, what? Let's do it. Ballet tights, 16. Okay. It wasn't what it is today. There was many males in dance back then in the 80s. So when you enter that, you're going to get challenged. It's not like today where no one can even say anything. You're going to get challenged. But I said, okay, I want to do it. And I've done so many crazy things like that where I pushed that, yeah, let's do it, challenge myself. So it brought me back to a quote, and I quickly Googled it. And I remember this. Ambrose Redmoon is the author of this. Courage is not the absence of fear. And this is what you said, Raymond. You said, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than the fear. And I love that, because at some point we all make a decision. Okay, here's a fear. This might happen. But you know what? This is more important. It's the old Rosa Parks, right? Rosa Parks, anybody, Gandhi, anyone who makes a stand against the status quo. You know what? This is more important than the fear that I'm feeling. I'm going to lean into it. So, it's the same idea. It's just stepping into that. And so many people live, when you see somebody living below their potential, that's what it is. It's that fear. Somewhere deep in them is the fear. And then there's a narrative. I always ask people to listen to the voice. When you decide not to do this, who do you hear? You don't hear yourself. You're hearing somebody of influence that said, those people, that thing, no, don't do that. This, who do you think you are? We're not that, that. And it's going to be a male or female voice. It's going to be not yours. I'm going to guarantee you. It's going to be somebody else's that you have even adopted. So that's one. And I wrote this down. I remember, weirdly, this brings me back to the health of any ecosystem, whether it be the gut, your gut bacteria, or the ecosystem you live in. Diversity of experiences, diversity of species, diversity of our life is healthy, because in any ecosystem, if it's diverse, it thrives. So in your gut, if you have, multiple species, thousands of species of different bacteria, you'll tend to be healthier because it can fight off numerous incoming. If you only have one species, for instance, if a community has one species of humans that live there for generations, one virus can take out that entire species because it's homogeneous, and it can just wipe them out. As if it's diverse, it tends to meet up on this diverse, and it's better, it's richer, it can survive. The Amazon versus the northern territories where, there's less diversity, there's less variety. So what I'm getting at, what this leads me to, is the idea that we should be challenging ourselves. We should be having diverse, as Dr. Charlie said, the brain, a mind once stretched can never return to its same size and same thinking. So when we expose ourselves to different, diverse, unique situations, it stretches your mind, and you're a lot healthier. You're a lot, I remember when I went to Germany the 90s. I went to Germany. I was walking around looking for, swastikas and Germans. And, I had this whole belief system about Germany. That's going to be this way. And I walk around not even looking at what's good about it. I'm walking around looking for skinheads or, whatever it might be. I'm walking with an attitude looking, never saw it. So, okay. So I wasted my time. I wasted the whole time I was there busy with a chip on my shoulder looking for trouble that might pop up. And then later on, my son, in his second last year of university, he said, I'm going to go to Germany for 6 months. I'm like, oh my God. Even still then, even though I didn't see anything, then I still had a belief that you're going to go to Germany. Jeez, what's going on? Anyways, he goes to Germany and he's completely no big deal. I'm like, okay, thanks, son. Though I'm this guy who likes to I have paradigms that I bought into. Then he told me he was going to Croatia on a vacation. I'm like, Croatia? What the hell are you going to Croatia for? Like, who would go to Croatia? Vacation? Who would go there? Like, I'm picturing stone streets and women with things on their head tied around there. I don't know what I was thinking. And he showed me pictures of beautiful waterfalls and beaches. And I'm like, oh my God. So again, this is why I'm glad the kids came along to break us out of some of our belief system. They do things differently and challenge us. If you want to be challenged, have kids. They will challenge your thinking, because at one point you had control, quote unquote. You had some kind of control over them, of where they went and the time they went to bed and who their friends are. You kind of can, influence that a little bit. And then they get older and they start to make their own decisions. And they start to break your paradigm. They start to stretch you. They start to see what you're made of. And that causes you to really look at and you can try and hold on to those old cultures, those belief systems, but they're gonna break you a little bit. You may still die with some of those cultures, and that's cool. If it works, that's great. Tradition is good. I'm not saying don't do tradition, but the kids will challenge you. They will challenge your traditions and poke the holes in it and make you think. And so anyways, I'm grateful. At first, it's not cool because you have these belief systems that you wanted them to grow up in. And then they come along and they challenge it. But that's the beauty of being challenged, is that either you're going to try to conform and bring them back, reel them back in, or you'll adapt and grow with them. So, but I love being like everybody else. At first, when you're faced with the new novel idea, you kind of, but then I love stepping back and going, okay, let me just think about that for a minute and then adapt, because it'll make you grow. And you still have the option of keeping your old way if it's working for you, but entertain new experiences. So yeah, that's me. And Mike. Oh, Ray, press the button on your Yeti.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I wrote down something here while we were talking. I wrote down that someone who leads a meek life and someone who leads a glorious life are both subject to that one way or another, right? We're going there. No matter what type of life you lead, the difference is that one will die a lowly death, one will die a hero's death or a glorious death, right? There's a difference in that. Our time is ticking. I don't know what is after, this life. I don't know when this life ends, right? For us, it's just the truth. But while we're here and we're given what we've been given, I think it's worth something. Okay, trying as much as you can to live a glorious life and to have a hero's death, quote unquote, that resonates. Obviously, I don't wish for no one to die, but the truth is, we're all going there at some point, right? It's just a natural order of things. And when you look through history, when you look through different figures that we're looking at, man, I think it's worth it, and it gives you a different type of inspiration. Okay, when you know what's most important in everything that you do. I'll go back again to that fear we talked about. Okay, back when I played football, back when you box, Alvin, you gave great example. I know Charlie understands, but like for me, I think habits, the more they're built positively or negatively, will impact how you actually approach fear. Because the higher level that I went, every time that I knew I would face a great opponent, let's say, I knew on the other side of that, there's a possibility of me being embarrassed in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people, maybe, right? So you know that. But at the same time, on the other side of that, there was something glorious about challenging myself against a special opponent, for me to learn something about myself, for me to push deeper. And then I understood over time that I never actually liked, I can't say I loved football, you know. I figured out over time that what I loved was that thing. You know, it was pushing myself and figuring something new about myself. It's facing fear in the eye and seeing what's on the other side, with the possibility of you failing, you know, with the possibility of you losing, because it's always there. If the higher level you go, the tougher the competition. So you have to expect you're not going to win everything, you know? And then you understand how life or business or anything in family, it's really a marathon where, hey, in certain seasons, it may be a losing season for you. Now, does that mean everything's over? No, the next one may be a winning season, but you continue to prepare. So there's always those two sides to the equation. Like I said, we're all going somewhere. We're not gonna be here forever. There's an end to this. But how do we want to live while we're here? How do we want it to end when we're done? You know, how do we want it to end exactly? And that thinking really applies to everything in the end. So I don't want a lowly death. If I could, I would rather have a hero's death, you know? But for that, there's only one way to live. And it's as much as possible to have a glorious life, whatever that means for you. And that's the cool part about it. Having a glorious life, if we dissect everything, okay, and we reverse engineer everything, that means, hey, I have to put myself in front of things that scare me. There's no other way, you know, to live a glorious life one way or another. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. Is that exposure we talked about, you know, exposure. And now I talked about habits and thoughts, and that's an important thing. They habits and thoughts that die hard. You know, I wrote this down too, that the more destructive and the bigger the habit, okay, if it's, let's say, negative for you, the more swift and the more fierce, I guess, we have to be when it comes to disrupting that and to exposing ourselves to the opposite. Because like I said, these habits and these thoughts, man, they can destroy us, like they can push us forward. If I haven't worked out in a while, starting over, is the toughest because I've been in a certain habit. I have these thoughts where I'm comfortable sitting on my couch. I'm comfortable doing this. So the reaction, the opposite, must be swift now and consistent over time. Well, same thing for everything else. So yeah, programming. It touches a lot of different things. But in the end, I find this is a question we forget to ask ourselves, is that there's a finality to this. You know, there is. Like, we're grateful we got to wake up this morning. Not everyone does to do that. And we often forget that and think we have forever to live. I think of Kobe Bryant, things like people like that were on their way to be greater, you know, after their basketball career. But, you know, how quick this thing can end. But we talk about Kobe Bryant right now. You know, one way or another, that's what I call a hero's death. Is that worth it? I think it is. You know, I think it is. So, yeah, whether we're walking in the street, doing whatever you're doing, having that type of warrior mindset and understanding, okay, if I get out of my house today, whether I live or whether I die, how am I gonna live my life? You know, and what am I gonna leave behind? Even in the little things, I think it echoes into everything else that you do later. And that's an important thing to remind ourselves of. This is me, and I'm passing the mic.
Great examples, fellas. So great. And I think as you both were talking, I was thinking about it's all comes down to that price we're willing to pay, right? Because everything has a price in life, and you get what you pay for. And if we are not going to, or we're not willing to pay a steep price, then our life experience is going to be what we paid for. But when we're willing to pay that price, and what paying for that price looks like is hard work, is effort, is study, is walking into our fears, right? Is being willing to be uncomfortable, or very uncomfortable at times, because that forces us to grow. It's massive. And our brain naturally wants to keep us in a comfort zone, for sure. And so we have to be very intentional about taking it outside of the comfort zone, because that's where our growth lies, is outside of our comfort zone, and continuing to do that again and again and again, so we get more familiar and more adept at stretching ourselves. I mean, even there's a daily routine now I have with these cold showers, and it's part of my health regimen. And it's challenging every day to turn that water to cold and stand under there and soak your whole body, but the benefits to it are really enormous. And it's another mental training, that it gets me comfortable with stepping outside and doing things that I know are going to be, on short term, immediately uncomfortable, but long term is where the benefits are at. And I'm not seeing the benefits immediately. Well, waiting to have them manifest at a later time. We have to play that long game. So many people are playing the short game. The short game is stay comfortable, but the long game is to pay the price and be willing to be uncomfortable for extended periods of time, so that we can reap that large reward at the end of our journeys, and have that glorious life that leaves a life that's memorable and impacted many other people along our journeys. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Yes. So finally, I would say, this is again why every so often I will do something. I have a friend, and this guy, so I was his mentor in early 2000s. Yeah, late 2000s. And so he came to me for treatments, and I also coached him mentally in his game, and he's risen up his game and became a champ in what he did and a professional and so on and so on. And so the student is now the teacher, because every time this guy calls me, like the other night, he called me, let's go, there's a boxing event in Toronto. And he says, let's go. And it's Thursday night. I'm like, man, I like my couch on Thursdays. And, I get home and I'm catching up to the week, and it's a busy week, and, my wife's away. And Thursday night, I stay with my son, and I do, the usual on a Thursday night, whatever the usual is. And it's very comfortable because tomorrow I've got to work, and I don't know how long it's going to be. It's going to be late, probably getting home, and 10 excuses why I shouldn't go. And then I took him on. I said, okay. I said, yeah. Because every time this guy calls me, I say, yeah. Last time we met, he took me we went to San Diego and hung out and did some mind-bending things. And again, every time I meet him, he shifts my paradigm, because he's always doing that himself. He lives I would say he lives a different life. But every time he calls me, I have a pull between the comfort of what I do every day and going out with him. Because I know when I go out with him, he'll do last time he said I missed this one, but he said he did African drumming. And then he took me to the boxing thing. And then the next time he was doing this, doing that. So I will always say, yeah. And he laughs too, because he goes, well, you just say, yeah, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Because again, he shakes me out of the status quo, my pull to the usual. And I know it's going to be a different experience going out with him, because he's always got, I don't know what he has in store, who I'm going to meet too. He meets a lot of people. He's a great networker, I've noticed lately. He's connecting, always connecting. I'm meeting interesting people around him. So he's my guy that I go, yeah, okay. Again, take you on a different road, challenge you a little bit, because he's younger too. He's younger, so he's out there doing his thing. So, but he comes to me, then I have that balance for him. I think he comes to me for stability, a bit more stability. So there's that nice mix. But I go to him for challenges, to challenge my thinking. So yeah, you always have to have that, think different every so often. Dr. Charlie's a speaker. Should he do something a little different in his speaking, the way he presents? Maybe do this, maybe do that. Ray, you're a leader. It's part of your leadership one day. Should you sit down and plug in every 6 months, take your team out to a team building, throw an axe, doing different things with them to shake up the status quo? When you want change to happen, do you do the same? Do you do the meeting in the same office that ideas are stagnant, or do you take them out? Your top team people, take them out, do something, stimulate novel, make it novel, so their brain thinks a little different. All right. So it extends beyond just us into, how do you do that as a leader? How do you do that as a professional? How do you do that as this, as that? When people come to me, my goal is that they don't get the same session over. I stimulate them, by throwing in one of my many tools and do it differently. So constant and never-ending Kaizen, right? Constant, never-ending improvement, just pushing the boundaries. So if you are currently watching and listening and think, wow, I would say just start by doing, again, drive a different way. If you always wore this thing, wear that wear a hat. Don't wear your hat. Cut your hair a little different. Do something different. Challenge yourself. If you don't wear shorts, wear shorts. If you don't wear long, like do something different. Maybe be small, maybe large, but do something different. So you could start challenging the brain. You'll notice the brain will wake up and you start looking at things a little different, and then that look different, look at something else different, look at just snowballs. All right. And then the mic right back over.
Good. So, yeah, the last point I'd like to say today, as I absorb all of that we talked about, is I go back to Matthew Park, our good friend Alvin, the personality assessments he had us do. I'll actually go back into that and dive into more of the details of like my top 5 traits. And then from there, intentionally try to reach out to people who are different, who have opposite traits or who have complementing traits. Because when I look at it, yes, these top 5 traits, I can dive into them, but they're naturally what I'm good at. All of us, we have extremes. We have things we're good at. We have things we suck at, right? I have things I'm not good at all. So how about I reach out, or I intentionally surround myself more with people that complement these traits? Just like you talked about that guy who he comes to you for stability, but he also it shifts your parenting every time you meet him. I think this is something definitely I need more of. I could get more of definitely right now. So I'll look into that, because I was even thinking about that last week in terms of hiring, how naturally we look for certain traits, we look for certain skill sets, but a lot of times people hire because they connect with someone, right? They connect, they're on the same level, but are they complimenting you? Like, are you hiring people so that they can be like you, or so that they can complement you and really make your team stronger? Because everything happens with team, So yeah, that's definitely my focus this week, is seeking out different things, shaking things up a little bit, and yeah, challenging my thinking and looking at something else. Says me, I'm passing the mic.
Yeah, I think that as we wrap up today, that it's about challenging ourselves, right? And being willing to be challenged and to look at life in a different perspective, situations in a different perspective, ourselves in a different perspective. And when we change those perspectives, a lot can happen that's positive. And because our brain does get comfortable, but when we push it, when we find ways to challenge it, then the great thing about how we're made is our brain always rises to the occasion. Every time it'll rise to the occasion. And so that's really neat. I'm actually looking at my schedule and how it's going to be a very interesting creation because of the type of work that I do, that my structure can change, and it does change from week to week because I'm not a 9 to 5 format at all. So I've got to be able to be more adaptable than I have been. And that's going to be a challenge, to where I have a Monday through Friday schedule. My weekend, there's more control on my weekends, but just having schedules that I can go to based on the situation, I can look ahead of time and say, okay, I'm going with schedule B this week, and then live that schedule. Or the next week, hey, I'm going with schedule D this week, and go through there. So it'll be interesting when that all shakes out. But I know at the end of the day, it'll make me better. But it's definitely going to be a challenge for my brain to figure that out. But I know that it will, because I've challenged it. So I'm looking forward to the week, and definitely, if there's any mothers watching our show, that they have a great day. It's a special day to celebrate moms. So don't want to forget to mention that. And with that, I'll pass the mic.
All right. Yes, definitely. For all those mothers out there and who are holding it down and, being the backbone to who we are. Much love to everyone. And I'm going to really circle back quickly to the conversation I was quickly having about diversity, ecosystems, the health, how having a diverse ecosystem flora is potential for better health. Also think about mental health. Those people who are more diverse, have diversity in their history, are more able to adapt to changing society. Because many times people who are hard fast on their set rules, this is how life should be, those people, this, that, they end up being, they break eventually in their health, mental health, many things. So being diverse, having a diverse community is so essential to health. It leads to flexibility, and flexibility is necessary in life. The stiff tree that tries to stand up against a wind will break, right? As opposed to the willow tree that bends and can survive the wind. So yeah. So I'll finish off here by saying my word then is diversity of experiences.
Great. I'm thinking anywhere in between flexibility and curiosity, really. Just curiosity this week. Just diving in a little bit, being curious. That's my word for the week.
I'm going to go with stretch. Stretching my thought processes, stretching myself physically, stretching myself emotionally. Definitely just stretch my boundaries and see what I can discover.
Good stuff. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, soon to be mothers, stepmothers, all of you guys. When I think of a mother, all the people in my life that I get to see as mothers, they're truly the hearts of everything that we are, everything that holds us together. I look at my son, for instance. He looks at me, he punches me on my arm, we have fun, we fight, he kisses his mom. You could tell like his heart just gets so warm, whenever he sees his mom. So we're grateful for you guys. You guys are amazing.
Amen on that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, my fellas.
All right, the crew, have a great week.
You as well.
Peace. Love, and
soul.
There you go. Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.